Welcome to the Convinced God Moves podcast, where stories of struggle are met with hope. My name is Audra. My mission here is to collect stories that will help others. The thing I didn't anticipate in this process was how incredibly vulnerable some people would be. The gift of trust is not taken lightly. Today, you will hear from Chalene, who is my brave mom. She is a very quiet and private person, so I was blown away when she wanted to share about physical and sexual abuse in her childhood. This was my first time hearing many of these stories. It is yet again a reminder that we just don't know the depth of pain others have gone through. I am thankful to have collected a few of her stories and how she navigated through the darkness. She truly is an overcomer.
This is a story that I really haven't shared much in my life. I can remember two friends that I shared part of the story with, and I shared some of the more difficult things with a psychologist just maybe 5 years ago. The psychologist cried as I told him part of it, assured me that I was not guilty in this and responsible, and he could tell that I had been able to come through this experience, and he was impressed by that and asked me why, and I shared with him it was my faith in Jesus Christ and the healing that comes from him that helped me to get through this. You know, children today go through abuse in their home, and they still want to stay there. You know, people don't understand that, but there are multiple sides to people. And I grew up in a home of 6 children, and there were many loving memories of my parents and my dad. When you're growing up, you're not realizing that what you're experiencing is abuse. My early years, up to about 2nd grade, I don't remember a whole lot of things other than happy memories and some discipline. My dad was a very strict disciplinarian. He had tight control of our family, but we were raised in a Christian home. My dad was a believer. He would take us to Sunday school and church and grew up with an early knowledge of the Lord. And I accepted the Lord early in my life. But as most children do, I had times when I disobeyed. I remember a few times of discipline for lying or stealing or those small things that we do as children as we grow and learn. But my father's way of disciplining was that the whole family would sit into the session. And I call it a session because it would be an hour to an hour and a half.
For one child's infraction.
Yes, even for just one child's infractions. I remember my older sister had been sitting on the floor during the discussion that my father would have going into all of the what she had done and what happened and why we don't do this and all of his explanation, and her feet fell asleep. And when it was time to have her punishment, her spanking with a belt, to stand in front of all of us and get spanked, her leg was asleep, and he was upset with her for it taking her too long to get up. But that would not be the end of it. After we had been spanked with a belt for several strikes, then we would have to visit again about all of it. And so this was normal routine for us with punishments. All of my siblings experienced that. And as I say, some things may not seem abusive to some people, but the public humiliation of that, as I look back, and how long it was, it just ingrained in me shame. I always was a shy child and quiet. And so that was really difficult for me and just ingrained that further, I believe. But something happened when I was in 3rd grade that I would consider in the lines of abuse. It's a personal thing I haven't really shared with many people. A care provider who was caring for me and my siblings, was grooming us for sexual abuse and had a party. He called it a bare naked party. There was no touching or any of that, but it was just like pop and things that we would not normally have, and a curtain hung around a window that made it in a small space. And as I look back and I understand about grooming people and doing that, I see that that's what that was. But my youngest sister was quite a bit younger than I was, and so she excitedly told my parents about this bare naked party we had.
Because it was so fun. You were having soda pop.
Yeah,
you had a
he made it.
room,
Yeah, it made it in a fun kind of thing. So my father and mother talked about it, and they decided that the best way that we should be punished for this, to learn the lesson, was that each of us had to spank my mother because they had raised us wrong. And so that's what we did. And then my dad stood behind us and spanked us if we did not spank her hard enough. And the emotional toll that took still, I feel today. But also, what it did was made it so that through the years, when the abuse continued sexually, I didn't feel I could go to my parents about it.
Yeah, your mom would be punished.
Yes, that I was wrong, that I was doing the wrong thing, and I felt trapped. And through the years, I would beg my younger sister not to go anywhere and leave me alone, because that's when it would happen. He never bothered her because she would tell. But my makeup, as shy as I was and all of that, I was a victim for that. And so I had to put up with that for several years through my childhood, and then again in my early teens. My sister, I told her why I didn't want her to go anywhere or be, and she most of the time was pretty good about that, but not always, and would go off and play or do something and leave me in a vulnerable position. Anyway, that's kind of what the beginning of that part of my life was, where I consider my first real abuse. But during those years, I remember my sister and I would, when we did PE or something like that, and we were changing, we would go into a stall in a bathroom to change because we wouldn't want people to see those belt marks and bruises that it would leave, because there would be.
It was so hard.
Down our legs where it would be visible. She went through years of his abuse. And one time, her friend was there when it happened, tried to step in and defend my sister and say, don't hit her, don't do that. And he pushed her against the wall. And my sister stepped in and said, you can beat me all you want. You better not touch her. She has parents who will do something about this, and you just leave her alone. And he did. Earlier in the years, my brother had been in the military and he was on leave, and it was at Christmas time, and he really wanted to see his cousins and my grandparents. And at that time, my dad had had a break with them and kind of forbid the family from going. But my brother went. My brother came back. My dad was very angry, and he got a huge moving box and threw all of my brother's clothing and things in it and left it out in the snow out by the front door, so that when he came home, it was there. And my dad told him he had chosen them over him and he didn't want anything to do with him anymore. He could go live with them or whatever he wanted to do. But my brother wanted to talk to him and try to explain or work it out. And my dad just was angry, and he beat my brother, just hit and hit and hit and knocked him down and hit him. But my brother would not fight him back.
Because your brother probably could have brought him down. If he's in the military.
Definitely.
And he's a young man.
Yeah, but no, he was broken by it. My father had a temper that would show up at his work a little bit, because he worked low-paying jobs, salesman, and he wanted to move up. He wanted to be a manager. He was very good with math and very good with numbers, and he was very good with people very social, and could sell whatever he was selling very easily. But with 6 kids and low-paying jobs, he and my mom both worked. Mom went to work after my younger sister started school. They had a hard time making ends meet. And he would always be able to financially figure out on paper how it would work to buy something or do something. But in the real world, there wasn't enough padding for that to make it. So through my early childhood, well, even into my early teens, my parents frequently moved because of not getting the rent paid, being evicted. And I didn't realize that in the younger years. It was later in my adolescence that I realized that's what was going on. And I knew that he would quit a job if he didn't get promoted when he thought he should without another job in hand. And then sometimes he would really try, because he would work 2 jobs to try to make ends meet to cover things. But our utilities were shut off frequently, the phone service, those kinds of things. I, as a child, would have opportunities at school to do things like getting books, the book drive, where the magazines would let you buy a book. I would never, ever ask my parents for money for that, even though I would have loved that. I wanted to be in band in junior high, but they didn't have money to buy just the small, basic things I needed to start with. And so it was a missed opportunity because I would not ask them for those things because I knew they didn't have the money for it. And it did bring a lot of tension into our home.
Your dad being so tired from working 2 jobs.
Yeah.
Or so mad at his previous job he had to quit. Did he ever get fired?
I don't know that he did. They didn't really talk about it. They kept things from us. Like, I went through quite a bit of guilt because my mom and dad had bought a new station wagon when I was in 5th grade. They went to look at cars, and they had my oldest sister who was now working. Mom and Dad had gone, and between them all, they didn't have enough cash to pay for the license and registration for the vehicle, but they bought this brand new car. They evidently got behind in payments. They had taken some friends from church and us kids all in the station wagon to the grocery store. And while we were in the grocery store, the car was repossessed. But my dad said that it had been stolen, and I had left my window down a little bit. And I felt like it was my fault that the car got stolen. And I didn't learn for years that that's what had happened, is that it had been repossessed. As we grew up and we got jobs and took on responsibilities in our home, because of my parents' financial situation, most of the money earned went into the household to my dad to manage, to pay the bills. And so I remember my older siblings having to do that. And they did it. They did it willingly. But it was just another area of control in their lives that they experienced. So anyway, I just want to say that through this time, I still remember a lot of good times, and I remember how important church and Christ were to me. And I remember the scriptures that really meant a lot to me in that time. And Proverbs 3:6 is one of them that I memorized at an early age. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your paths. Psalms 119, 105, thy word is a lamp unto my feet, a light unto my path. My view of God at that time was that Jesus was a knight in shining armor who was going to rescue me, who was taking me from this life that I was living and would rescue me. And I was his bride, and so it was like the perfect knight in shining armor.
And you needed rescued.
Yeah, even at that time, I think I realized I did, but even though I wasn't really facing what this really was that I was experiencing. When I became a teen, I had a boyfriend who treated me well and cared for me, and I fell in love with him. I was only 14. And I look back and I think, 14, I cared greatly for him. At first, it's a very innocent relationship, and we cared a lot for each other. And we would talk on the phone. But my dad decided that isn't what he wanted. He didn't want us to be together and set his foot down that we shouldn't do that. And we ran away together, and we ran away for 2 weeks. We came to the Oregon coast, and we went up into the woods, and we stayed for the first week, just made a lean-to and stayed in it. Then we ran out of food, and so we made our way into Cannon Beach and took jobs, and we were starting to work. But one day the police stopped my boyfriend, took him into custody, and then had him tell him where I was, which was at work. So after going back, then there was a forbiddance of being in any contact, or I would be put into a home for bad girls. We abided by that for a short period of time, but we really did care for each other. I think my dad's answer to that was to move, and so we moved further away into a suburb of Portland, but that didn't really stop my relationship with him. So eventually, my boyfriend moved in with my sister and his brother, and in the same community we were. My parents went to a new church and decided to try it, and my sister and her husband came, and my boyfriend came. They asked everybody to sign the guest book. So my parents signed the guest book, and my sister and her husband signed the guest book. And then I didn't know it, but my boyfriend signed the guest book, Mr. and Mrs. David Waltner.
So hang on. Back then, churches had you sign a guest book when you came?
Yes. And so I didn't even know that he had done that. He didn't know we were coming back, and he didn't think anything of it. But as the pastor visited with my folks and visited with my sister and her husband, he was confused.
Where's the Mrs. to this Mr.?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so at this time, I was 15. So he asked my dad about it and showed it to him. So after church, after he had showed him, my dad was very upset, very upset. He said to me, "Who do you love more, your mom and dad or David?" And I knew in my heart, I knew in my mind that to tell the truth was going to have a cost.
Yeah.
And I had even known that things were escalating as we got older with my siblings, most of them, and they were growing up, becoming independent, and would challenge my father. There was a big row. And so I knew that, and I had shared with my counselor that I was concerned. But in that time, there were no rules or laws about reporting when someone told them that you were in an abusive situation. I did tell my dad the truth, that I loved David more. My father became really irate, and he began slapping me 10, 15 times, knocked me down, get up, slapping me maybe another 10 times, knocked me down, and then a third time, and slapping me and knocked me down. And then finally my mom said, "That's enough." He told me that if I wanted to live like a harlot, then I was going to go live like a harlot, leave his house, never come back, then called to have my boyfriend come and get me. I went and packed a bag. My sister came home from church, and my dad just said, "Say goodbye to your sister. You'll never see her again."
Oh, my goodness.
Again, I left. I had 2 black eyes, and I missed the next day of school. But then I went in and checked myself in the following day, and they didn't ask one question about the bruising or any of that. They just admitted me back in school. That situation where I was gone lasted about a month and a half, and then the pastor, he came to visit my sister and her husband and my boyfriend and I. He shared the gospel and listened to concerns and said, "If I talk to your parents and they're willing for you to come back, would you do that?" And so I did. My dad had his rules, that he would let us date, but he didn't want any physical relationship between us. But it wasn't long afterward that I realized that I was pregnant. They allowed us to get married, and at 16, I got married. I know that my father was trying to keep me from doing the wrong thing, trying to control my life so that I would finish school and do the right things. I was able to forgive my father. A few years later, I heard stories of how my dad was raised. He had a large family. He had a sibling who cared for him a lot, and she beat him. And I know that is a generational thing now that I've been a teacher and I've had a lot of instruction about abuse, and that is a pattern that you've learned that. That's the way you discipline, and you don't have other skills to do that. And I know that my father loved me through every single one of those situations, and it was a desperateness in him. So I was able to forgive him and have a relationship after I got married and continued on my life. Matter of fact, I took my dad and mom in when they were getting old enough that they didn't feel they could live on their own, and they lived with us for a few years. And I was there when my father got dementia, and I was the one who helped him find a place and go through the struggle of getting that diagnosis. So I truly forgave him. I found I had more trouble forgiving myself. There are some scriptures that have really helped me through the years. James 4:7 says, "Submit yourselves then to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you." I would have memories. I knew I was forgiven, but I'd have memories of things I had done wrong. And it took quite a while to get past that and really forgive myself, even though I knew God forgave me. And then Romans 8:38-39 has had a big impact in my life. "For I'm persuaded that neither death nor life, nor angels, nor principalities, nor powers, nor things present, things to come, can separate us from the love of God." And I realized that even though I had this guilt, I'm empowered to live for him and to become what he wants me to be. And then John 16:33 says, "I have told you these things so that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take courage. I have overcome the world." And as I look back, and I've been able to move beyond and become more of what God wanted me to be, I feel like I've overcome. And I know in Revelation it tells us to those who overcome, and he's talking about the world and our Christian faith and overcoming. But it's also those things in our life that hold us back and separate us from truly being all that he wants us to be. There's something about me, I guess, would be the way to put it, that I was told in my young years, and it's stuck with me through the years, that God has a purpose for us. That I always felt special because my mom told me that I was born with a veil over my head. And what that is it's an extra layer of skin that was from the top of my head down to my shoulders, and they have to clip that away. The old wives' tale of that is that when you're born with a veil over your head, you're blessed of God. My mom said that she always felt that God had something special for me. And I believe he helped me to become victorious over that childhood that I had. I see my dad as really reaching out as hard as he could with any power within him to break a chain of events that he thought was going on, or what choices I was making in my life. It was definitely the wrong way, but I do think it was driven out of love. And, it's kind of hard probably to grasp that I believe he's a Christian. He loved God. I remember many, many times him singing hymns and the tears running down his face. And he talked about God all through his life and being concerned for his kids who were away from the Lord. But it was something within him that he evidently never felt led to deal with, because he had taken abuse on as a child himself. I know that they say in studies that they have found that kids are successful who have all of many, many negative things in their lives that they have to deal with, if they have somebody in their life who's supportive and takes them on and loves them and cares for them. And in my life, that really was God. I had Sunday school teachers and people who were very, very loving and nurturing to me, but not consistently. We moved so much, which I think also was part of the reason I was so shy. It was so hard for me anyway to get to know people. I would have one or two close friends in school rather than a lot. God was consistent everywhere I went. And even in times when my dad didn't go to church with us because he worked Sunday or whatever, we went to Sunday school and church. And I had people who were pouring into me. But it was the scriptures and the songs and the relationship that I had with him. And even though I would keep coming back and asking forgiveness, accepting again in my life, I loved him all through that. I loved God all through that. I was definitely making some wrong decisions and had done things that I know weren't pleasing to him. But he forgives. And he takes us where we are. Yeah. And he loves us anyway. I have a cousin who went through physical abuse, and we talk periodically. And she often says, and I really believe this, is that you can live as a victim all your life, being filled with hatred, anger, using it as an excuse for why you're the way you are, or you can become victorious. And you can move beyond. You have the power. You have the ability. Satan's dealing with me about how I reacted to that and the thoughts that were planted and the feelings that were put there. I needed to be broken free of that. And only by Jesus Christ's help, God's help, could I do that.
The coolest gift she had as a child was the faith that God was a knight in shining armor who would come to rescue her. It's sad that decades after her abuse, she'd still be struggling to forgive herself, carrying shame that was not hers to carry. I imagine with each memory that knocked her over, right behind it came her knight in shining armor, speaking life and truth and healing. Colossians 1:13, for he has rescued us from the dominion of darkness and brought us into the kingdom of the Son he loves. What a gift that we can all be rescued.